Whoa, there's pronunciation guides.
Yep, I know how to do most of the TGCF names. Just because the dub.
Whoa.
What are we looking at now? Yeah, that's my baby. I love him.
Oh, I just gotta look at all the art real.
I'm gonna spoil it. Alright, where's the fucking first one? There it is. Yes, my queens! Yes, the sleigh. The slayage.
It's not nearly as many art pages in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the fucked up boy that they find.
Yeah, I remember him.
Are you ready?
Now I
Are we
am.
popcorn reading? Are you gonna read?
Sure, I'll read. Wow, how
Do you
long are
want
we
me to
reading? Are we
start? Do
reading
you want
this
me to
whole
start?
prologue?
Yeah, I'll read the
You
prologue.
mean,
I can start.
okay, when are you stopping?
I'll say popcorn Leon and then it's your
Okay.
turn. That's how popcorn reading
Scared,
works, bro.
I'm scared. But there's
Okay.
only two of us.
Wait, I need some like light
We need some
background
music.
music. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Chinese
Oh,
traditional
hold on,
calm
I gotta set up the vibes.
relaxing
Hold on.
Chinese traditional music.
Okay, hold on. I have to set up the vibe.
Okay, okay, okay. Whoa.
Hello?
Hello. Are the vibes set?
I think so. Wait, bring your fucking. Let me listen to this. Hold on. Let me listen along. I have to be in there. Okay. Traditional China. This is stupid.
I don't know, man.
I set my my light under here is red to get
Wow,
in the mood. To
wow,
get in the mood.
wow.
Hold on, I have to change the color of my mouse real quick.
We're
There
setting
we
up
go.
for gay sex. Wow.
Oh, we just changed color. Okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Among all the deities of heaven, are you open to the page?
Yeah.
Okay. Among all the deities of heaven, there was one famous laughingstock of the three realms. Legend has it that 800 years ago, there was an ancient kingdom in the central plains called the Kingdom of Shenle. The Kingdom of Shenle was a vast and bountiful land. There were four treasures within it: abundant and handsome beauties, vibrant music, and marvelous literature, gold and gems, and their one infamous crown prince. What would be the best way to describe this crown prince? Well, he was a unique man. He was beloved by the king and the queen, and they doted upon him exorbitantly. They would often say with pride, "My son will become a great ruler in the future, and his good name will echo down through history." However, the crown prince was not interested in imperial power or wealth in the mortal world at all. What he was interested in his own words, was, "I want to save the common people." When he was young, the crown prince focused solely on his cultivation, and there were two short tales that were widely spread of his time on that path. Popcorn Leon.
The first sale took place when he was 17 years old. That year, a grand Shangyuan heavenly ceremonial procession took place in the kingdom of Shanlin. Although the custom of conducting these divine ceremonies has been out of fashion for centuries, it is still possible to deduce what a grand jubilant occasion it must have been from remnants of ancient books and oral tradition. The wondrous Shengyuan festival upon the grand avenue of divine might. Seas of people gathered on either side of the grand street, with royals and nobles talking and laughing in merriment atop the high platforms. The glorious royal warriors, bedecked in armor, opened the paths while maidens danced elegantly, their fair hands scattering flowers. And who could say whether the flowers or the maidens were more beautiful? From within the golden carriage came marvelous music that drifted across the entire imperial city. And at the rear of the procession was a grand stage pulled by 16 white horses in golden
Bridles.
Bridles. Upon this towering grand stage stood the god-pleasing warrior, the focus of everyone's attention. At the heavenly ceremonial procession, the god-pleasing warrior wore a golden mask. Dressed in glamorous attire and with the sacred sword in hand, he played the role of the subduer of evil, the number one martial god for the past 1,000 years, the heavenly emperor Zhengwu. Popcorn August.
It was the greatest of honors to be chosen for the role of the god-pleasing warrior, which was why the selection criteria was exceedingly strict. Thus, the one chosen that year was the crown prince. People across the kingdom believed that he would give the most thrilling performance as the god-pleasing warrior. However, an accident happened that day. During the third tour of the procession, it passed by a city wall that was hundreds of meters tall. At the time, the martial god upon the grand stage was just about to strike the demon down. It was the climax of the performance, with people on both sides of the street at the height of excitement. The top of the city wall swarmed with crowds clamoring to watch the show, pushing and shoving each other to get the best view. At that moment, a small child fell from the edge of the wall. The screams of the crowd reached to the heavens. Just when everyone thought this child would stain the grand avenue of divine might with blood, the crown prince looked up, leapt into flight, and caught the boy. The people only saw a glimpse of a white silhouette that flew like a soaring bird before the crown prince landed with that small child in his arms. The golden mask fell, revealing the young, handsome face behind it. In the next second, cheers erupted. Popcorn Leon.
The people were thrilled and joyous, but the state
Preceptors
of the Royal Cultivation Hall were troubled. They had never imagined such a huge mishap would occur. This was ominous luck, the gravest of misfortunes. Every trip the grand stage made around the imperial capital symbolized 1 year of peace and harmony within the kingdom. Now that it was cut short, did that not mean the invitation of disaster? The state preceptors were so distraught they were losing hair as fast as the rain fell. After much contemplation, they called the crown prince over to speak to him. In the softest manner possible, they requested, "Your Highness, might you be willing to face the wall in reflection for a month? It does not really need to be a month as long as the intention is there." The crown prince smiled. No. This was what he said. "There is nothing wrong with saving people. Why would the heavens condemn you for doing the right thing?" But what if the heavens do condemn you? Then it is the heavens who are wrong. Why would I apologize to those who are wrong? The state preceptors could not argue. This crown prince was such a person. He had never encountered anything he could not do, nor had he ever met anyone who did not love him. He was the justice of the mortal realm, the center of the world. Although the state preceptors were frustrated, what the heck do you know? It was not their place to say much, and they did not dare say more on the subject either. His Highness would not have listened anyway. Popcorn August.
The second tale takes place in the same year, when the crown prince was 17. Legend has it that, south of the Yellow River, there was a bridge called Yin Yan. Upon this bridge was a ghost that had been lingering for years. This ghost was exceedingly fearsome. It was clad in broken armor, the flames of hell blazed beneath its feet, and its body was covered in blood and pierced by all manner of sharp weapons. Every step it took, it left behind a footprint of blood and fire. Every few years, it would suddenly appear at night and wander back and forth at the head of the bridge, blocking travelers to ask them 3 questions. What is this place? Who am I? What is to be done? The ghost would then devour whoever answered incorrectly. However, no one knew what the correct answers were. As the years went by, this ghost devoured countless travelers. During his ascetic travel, the crown prince caught word of this, so he set out and found Yinyan Bridge and stood guard there night after night, until finally, one night, he met the haunting ghost. When the ghost appeared, it was indeed as horrifying as the legend said. It asked the crown prince the first question, and he answered with a smile. "This place is the human world." However, the ghost replied, "This place is the abyss." An auspicious start. The first answer was already incorrect. Well, all three answers are going to be wrong anyway, the crown prince thought, so why should I wait till you're done? And so he pulled out his weapon and lunged. The fight was complete chaos. The crown prince was skilled in martial arts, but the ghost was terrifying and dauntless. Man and ghost fought so hard that the sun and moon began to topple. In the end, the ghost was finally defeated. After the ghost vanished, the crown prince planted a flowering tree at the head of the bridge. As he did so, a cultivator passed by and happened to see him sprinkle a handful of dirt to consecrate the grave and send the ghost off. "What is this?" he asked. And thus the crown prince replied with his now famous line, "Body in the abyss, heart in paradise." When the cultivator heard this, he gave a light smile, then transformed into a divine warrior clad in white armor, with auspicious clouds beneath his feet. Then he drew in the wind and rode off in holy light. Only then did the crown prince realize that he had just encountered the heavenly emperor, who had personally descended to the mortal realm to subdue evil. Popcorn Leon.
The deities had already taken notice of this exceedingly outstanding God-pleasing warrior since his time in the Shengyuan heavenly ceremonial procession. After the meeting at the
Yinyan.
The Yinyan Bridge, they asked the heavenly emperor, "How does my lord find this royal highness?" The emperor answered, "This child's future is infinite." That night, a celestial phenomenon manifested in the skies above the palace, and storms raged. Amidst the flames of flashes of lightning and the roars of thunder, the crown prince ascended. Whenever a mortal ascended, the heavenly realm always shook. When the crown prince ascended, the entire heavenly realm quaked outright with 3 times the normal tremors. Achieving fruitful cultivation was always far too difficult. It required talent, training, and luck. It was often a long road of 100 years for a god to be born. It was not that there were no fortunate souls who became deities at a young age. However, the majority who tried exhausted their entire lives, trained for 100 years, and still had no heavenly tribulations dawn upon them. Even if they did come to face a heavenly tribulation, should they fail the trial, they would die, or be ruined if they managed to survive. Those who made the attempt were as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. But most were simply ignorant mortals who would spend their entire lives as nothing more than ordinary, never finding their own paths. Yet this royal highness was no doubt the darling of the heavens. Whatever he wanted, he received. Whatever he wanted to do, he succeeded. He wanted to ascend and become a god, so at the age of 17, he did just that. He had always led the hearts of the people, and the king and the queen loved and missed him dearly. So to honor their son, the king ordered great temples and shrines to be built across the land, and for statues of the crown prince to be erected and worshipped by all. The more believers that were amassed, the more temples were constructed. That meant the crown prince's life would be more prolonged, and his spiritual powers would grow more powerful. Thus, in the few short years, the Shanle. I knew it! I just forgot! Shanle. Palace of the Crown Prince became uncomparably glorious, and for a time its prosperity and splendor reached its peak. Until 3 years later, when Shanle fell into chaos. The cause of the chaos was tyranny, with rebels rising in revolt. However, while the flames of war were set ablaze all over the mortal world, the deities of the heavenly realm could not easily intervene. Their concerns were ghosts, monsters, and demons that encroached on the borders, and whatever fell outside of those parameters had to be left to its own devices. Cornelius.
Think about it. Conflicts were everywhere in the mortal realm, and everyone believed they were justified. So if any god were to stick a foot in, today you would back your former kingdom. Tomorrow, another would avenge his descendants. Thus, would there not be gods who wanted to fight each other all the time, who would fall into a life of disgrace? That was why the crown prince needed to keep his distance. But he did not care for that reasoning in the least. He said to the heavenly emperor, "I will save the common people. The Heavenly Emperor possessed 1,000 years of divine power, but even he did not dare let those words hang off his lips. When he heard this, it was easy to imagine how he felt. Yet he could not do anything to stop the Crown Prince. He said, "You cannot save everyone." "I can," the Crown Prince declared. Thus he descended to the mortal realm without looking back. Naturally, the whole nation of Shenle rejoiced. However, since ancient times, there had been one truth the people always spoke of in the human world. There would never be a good outcome when gods descended to the mortal realm without permission. And so, not only were the flames of war not extinguished, they blazed even wilder. It was not to say that the Crown Prince did not try, but it would have been better had he not intervened at all. The harder he worked, the more of a mess the war became. The people of Shenle were devastatingly battered and crushed, the wounded and casualties innumerable, and in the end, a plague swept through the entire imperial capital, and the rebel army broke through the palace and ended the war. If it was said that Shenle was originally hanging on by a thread, then the Crown Prince came and cut it directly. After the kingdom fell, the people finally came to realize one thing. The Crown Prince they worshipped as a god was never as perfect or strong as they imagined. To speak harshly, was he not just some useless trash who could not do anything right? Without anywhere to vent the anguish and pain of losing their homes and families, the battered people furiously poured into the palaces of the Crown Prince, toppled his divine statues, and burned down the divine temples. 8,000 temples burned for 7 days and 7 nights, burned until there was nothing left. From that moment on, the martial god who protected peace and safety vanished. Oh my god, I'm getting a notification. And a god of misfortune who brought disasters was born. When the people call you a god, you are a god. If they call you crap, you are crap. You are whatever they say you are. It had always been thus. The Crown Prince could absolutely not accept this reality, and he had an even harder time accepting the punishment he received for his transgressions, banishment. His spiritual powers were sealed, and he was knocked back down to the mortal realm. He'd grown up endlessly coddled and pampered. He had never tasted the suffering of the human world before, yet this punishment hurled him from the clouds down into the mud, and in this mud, for the first time, he understood the taste of poverty, hunger, and filth. This was also the first time he did things he never thought he would do willingly. He stole, he robbed, he cursed loudly, and he gave up on himself. He lost all dignity, no self-esteem remained, and he was as unkempt as one could be. Even his most loyal servants could not accept this change in him, and chose to leave. Body in the abyss, heart in paradise. This phrase had been engraved on the stone monuments and plaques everywhere in Shenle. If not for the war that had burned almost all of the kingdom to the ground, if the Crown Prince were to see the remnants of those words, he would probably be the first to rush and destroy what was left. The person who said those words had personally proven that when the body was in the abyss, the heart could not be in paradise. He ascended to the heavens quickly, but his fall from grace was even faster. That awe-inspiring impression at the grand avenue of divine might, the evil he met at Yinian Bridge, it had all seemed as if it were only yesterday, and the heavenly realm merely sighed for a while before letting go of what was past. Popcorn Leon.
Until one day, many years later, a huge rumble thundered from the sky. This royal highness ascended for the second time. Throughout history, heavenly officials who were banished either never regained their glory or fell into the ghost realm. It was rare to turn over a new leaf after banishment. This second ascension was truly grand and spectacular. What was even more spectacular was that after he ascended, he charged all the way into the heavenly realm and rampaged in full fury. Thus, he had only been ascended for the span of 1 incense time before he was knocked back down again. 1 incense time. It could be considered the swiftest and shortest ascension in history. If the first ascension could be considered a beautiful tale, then the second ascension was a farce. Having been banished twice, the heavenly realm looked upon this crown prince with full contempt. And in that contempt, there was caution. After all, he was already threatening and on edge after the first banishment. Now that he had been banished twice, would he not go berserk and take revenge on the world? Yet who knew? After being banished this time, he did not go berserk and even adjusted earnestly to banished life. There were no issues at all, and the only problem was that maybe he was taking things a little too seriously. Sometimes he would busk at the end of the street, expertly playing any instrument and singing any songs, and even shattering boulders on his chest as part of his act. While there had been long word that this royal highness could sing and dance and was a master of many talents, it was unbelievable to witness all his talents in such a fashion, truly inspiring complicated feelings in anyone who saw. Sometimes he would diligently and humbly collect scraps. The deities were shocked to their cores. It was unthinkable that things would reach this point, where now, if was to say, the son you gave birth to is the crown prince of Shanle, it would be a curse more malicious than may you die without sons. He was once the noble and gracious crown prince, a heavenly official who was part of the divine ranks. But in truth, no one else had ever screwed up so badly. And so this was the story of the man who was known as the laughing stock of the three realms. After laughing, those who were more sentimental might also sigh. The darling of the heavens, who once stood at such a height, had truly and thoroughly vanished. Divine statues collapsed, a native kingdom was destroyed, and not a single believer remained. Gradually, he was forgotten by the world. Thus, no one knew where he had drifted afterward. It was already a great shame to be banished once. No one would be able to get back up after being banished twice. Popcorn August.
Many more years passed. Suddenly, one day, there was another huge rumble in the sky. The heavens fell, and the earth cracked, the ground trembled, and the mountains shook. The lanterns of everlasting light shuddered, the firelights danced in fury, and all the heavenly officials inside their golden palaces jolted awake, every one of them running out to ask each other, which new dignitary has ascended? Such a grandiose entrance. Yet who knew? They had exclaimed in wonder the first second, but in the next, all the deities of heaven were thunderstruck. Weren't you done? That infamous weirdo, the laughing stock of the three realms, the legendary royal highness, the crown prince, he fucking ascended again.
Dude, he ascended again.
Yes. Should we read, do you remember what happens? His ascension?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then we can skip to book 2, I believe.
Oh God.
And then let me go to the chapter that we ended season 2 on. We can read that last chapter. Okay, I think it's chapter 24. Whoa, the music.
Pretty good. Oh God. I need to know how to say some of these.
Yeah. I'll read for a while.
Okay.
Are you at 24?
Yeah.
For some reason, Shilian was suddenly filled with courage again. After Lan Chinchou had left, Shilian's steps had been hesitant, his shoulders slumped. But this courage came from nowhere, and it was hard to say where it would go. All Shilian knew was that it made him stand tall once more. He stood unmoving, and Shi Chunshuan approached, giving him a small pat on the back. What a guy, Your Highness. I don't know how you managed to befriend him, but you're very lucky. It was rare for Shilian to hear someone tell him he was lucky. He glanced at Shi Qingxuan and smiled. Really? Maybe. I think so too. Behind them, Feng Xin continued to wipe his face wordlessly. When the two turned their heads, they saw his face covered in white strands, miserable and unkempt, and they had to work to hold back their laughter. Sorry about that, Shilian said. That counted as an apology on Hua Cheng's behalf. Feng Xin finally picked off all the white strands from his face. I'm not as skilled as him, so there's nothing to say. The three of them then conducted a final sweep of all the caves, double-checking to make sure there were indeed no more humans or anything left behind before riding a draft of wind back to the heavenly court. Once they passed the gates, they saw that the streets were filled with crowds of junior officials from the middle court, moving about, checking every nook and cranny of every palace as if they were about to face a grave enemy. When they finally arrived at the Palace of Divine Might, the main hall was already filled with heavenly officials of the upper court, and even from afar they could hear them arguing. The first thing they heard was, Hua Cheng dares accuse the upper court of the heavens of sending a spy? How ludicrous! Why would the heavenly realm need to send a spy? Shilian and Shi Qingxuan cleared their throats lightly when they heard. Sending a spy was most likely the truth. Nothing had been settled yet, and the officials already couldn't wait to start blathering. If the accusation was indeed true, wouldn't that be putting their foot in their mouth? The three entered the hall with Shiching Shuen in the lead. When the crowd saw him, they greeted, "The Lord Windmaster has returned! Thank you for your hard work!" But all eyes were on Shilian. They were about to press for more, but saw Feng Xin emerging from behind them, looking like he had crawled out of a bloody pond, his face dark. Everyone was frozen to the spot and immediately turned their eyes away. After all, no one wanted to be loudly cursed out in the great hall. Only Mu Ching held his gaze. He not only didn't care to avoid him, but he purposely stared, his intent more than obvious. Shilian raised his eyes and saw Junwu seated above on his throne. With a hand propping up his head and fingers pressed against his temple, his eyes were closed and he looked exhausted. Shilian could understand exactly how he felt. In the past, there might not have been any conferences or meetings of this sort for months at a time. With all the incidents that had happened recently, the Palace of Divine Might was filled to the brim time and time again. It was as if there was a situation every day, and they'd have to convene twice for each. If Shilian were in his shoes, he'd be tired too. Besides, there were many that wanted to have their voices heard, and they babbled away. One of the officials exclaimed, "He came and went as he willed. Scary to think he was able to connect the palace of Shenle to somewhere else. Now that he showed that he could easily kidnap His Highness who offended him, who knows if he'll kidnap any other heavenly officials? We can't possibly let this go. We need to stop him right now." If this were the mortal realm, it would be akin to a rebel digging a tunnel beneath the royal palace and sneaking out freely. Of course people were uneasy. No wonder the middle court officials were busy searching and safeguarding the grounds. Mu Ching, on the other hand, had something else to say. He said coolly, "Hua Cheng has so many devotees, and he lords over Ghost City. Something minuscule like burning his paradise manor would be nothing to him. He might not have broken into the heavens, just because His Highness offended him." Shiching Shuen immediately countered, "General Xuanzhen, you're mistaken. Everyone heard Hua Cheng admit it himself. Speaking of, which general is responsible for security this month? Isn't it a dereliction of duty that the palace of Shenle had the connection spell cast upon it without the general even noticing?" Pei Ming had been standing quietly on the side, unperturbed and with his arms crossed. When he heard Shiching Shuen, he spoke up. "Me." Shiching Shuen had accidentally remembered wrong and thought it was Mu Ching on duty, but he'd ended up calling out Pei Ming, and now things were somewhat awkward. However, Pei Ming didn't push off the blame. "I'm on duty this month. This is my oversight." A heavenly official who was on good terms with Pei Ming immediately tried to help him out of the predicament. "If you ask me, we should just look at these matters one case at a time. Let's clear up the issue in regards to the Gilded Banquet massacre." Just then, Ling Wen, who's the fucking secretary woman, who was positioned next to the throne, suddenly spoke up. "We have news from His Highness Tai Hua." Junwu finally opened his eyes. What did he say? Ling Wen was quiet for a moment, then she replied, "He states that there's another side to the story of the Gilded Banquet massacre. He will resolve the conflict with His Highness himself, and there's no need for anyone else to interfere. Also that His Highness' requests for banishment should not go through. Those are the two things." "What other side?" Mu Ching frowned. "He didn't say anything more, that is all," Ling Wen replied. To think that they would see a battle erupt and a hammer come down heavily, only to have it land as lightly as a feather, the heavenly officials couldn't help but feel rather disappointed. Lan Chinchou was the plaintiff, and the plaintiff was no longer accusing the defendant. So what fun was there to be had watching? Besides, Lan Chinchou wasn't telling, and Shilian didn't look like he was going to say anything either, so there was nothing more to chew on in this matter. Following Ling Wen's report, Junwu appointed Feng Xin and Mu Ching to assist Pei Ming in strengthening security and settled a few other matters before waving his hand and dismissing everyone. Shilian stayed behind, and he could hear the faint conversations passing by. "I knew it. Whenever he stirs up anything, the Emperor says he'll interrogate him, but in the end, nothing comes of it. We've been blind. He's actually someone significant. Gotta watch what we say from now on." Once everyone left, Shilian approached the throne and bowed. "I've caused my lord problems. This does not count as a problem just yet. The real problem was you stubbornly proclaiming yourself the only one responsible for the Gilded Banquet massacre." Jillian was hesitant, but in the end, just still gave an account of the whole story. After listening to the story, Junwoo commented, Shenle, in regards to your methods in managing this matter, you worked hard for nothing and pleased no one. Jillian hung his head low. I know. Never mind, you are always like this, Junwoo said. Tai Hua has now changed focus to pursue the Green Ghost. Once he succeeds, he will certainly return for you. Have you thought on how you will face him? Not yet, but let's focus on something else, Jillian replied. Junwoo chuckled. Such as? Is it something interesting that can amuse me? Was it my lord who sent the Earthmaster to Ghost City as a spy? Jillian asked. Yes, Junwoo said leisurely. Why? Junwoo answered slowly. Because it was Hua Cheng who planted a spy in the heavenly realm first. Jillian was taken aback. Junwoo stood. For many years, news has reached Hua Cheng's ears too quickly. There were many things he should not have known and instead knew too well. As for what can be done and what cannot be done, where the line is and how to cross said line, he is overly perceptive and precise. That he could connect directly to your palace of Shenle only proves that he does indeed have a spy here in the heavenly realm. Otherwise, it could not have been done. To be honest, Jillian had noticed this too. After all, Hua Cheng really did know way too much. Hearing Junwoo say it out loud, it wasn't hard to believe. Does my lord have any evidence? Jillian inquired. Junwoo shook his head slowly. It is because there was no proof that things were suspicious regardless, that I sent Ming Yi to the ghost realm. It was unexpected that Ming Yi fell into his hands before the spy was found. Although you saved him from Hua Cheng's grasp, now it will be even more difficult to find that spy. Is it the upper court or the middle court that's the problem? Jillian asked. Hard to say, Junwoo said. Aside from you, it might be anyone. Perhaps there is only one mole, perhaps more. No wonder Junwoo didn't appoint anyone else to investigate Ming Yi's disappearance. If it could be anyone besides him, Jillian couldn't help but think, even the Windmaster, Chen Chou, Feng Xin, everyone is a possible agent? Just then, Junwoo spoke. Shenle, I know you think highly of Hua Cheng right now. You understand your own position, and others should not comment on the friends you make. However, when necessary, be wary of Hua Cheng. Do not give anything away. Hearing this, Jillian schooled his thoughts. Junwoo continued, To become a supreme, one must have experienced unimaginable suffering and pain. One either ascends from such tribulations, or is doomed to the depths of hell, never to return. The two supreme ghost kings that emerged from Mount Tonglu, Blackwater and Hua Cheng, are both far more frightening than you think. Jillian lowered his head, and neither agreeing or disagreeing. Junwoo said, I do not know what his objectives or directives are, but he knows the motives and movements of the upper court. That in itself is disadvantageous. When he heard the word disadvantageous, Jillian raised his head and blurted, Sanlang, he... Seeing that Junwoo turned his head to him, Jillian paused, then corrected himself. Hua Cheng wouldn't do anything overly malicious. If my lord thinks about it, with his strength, should he have wanted to cause havoc and raise hell, he would have done so already. If he didn't before, then without real reason, he won't in the future. Pray that it will be so, Junwoo said. But you know I cannot take that risk. Hold on, I'm going to drink water. After leaving the Palace of Divine Might, Jillian paced slowly through the streets of the Heavenly Court. When he passed by the Palace of Shenle, he stopped to appraise it. This was the palace gifted to him by Junwoo, resplendent, brand new, but also foreign. The large scarlet-red doors were shiny and bright, but were plastered with nailed-on talismans and charms, forming a giant X, and cautioning anyone who should see. When Shi Qingxuan left the Palace of Divine Might, he had told Shilian that his palace was currently sealed shut since it was connected to elsewhere, so Shilian was welcome to rest at his palace instead. However, after staring at his palace of Shenle for a while, Shilian suddenly turned on his heel. He didn't go to the palace of the Windmaster either. He stopped caring what he was originally going to do, and instead headed straight to the Ascension Gates and jumped. Passing through the sea of clouds, his landing point was Mount Taisang. Upon the summit of Mount Taisang, there used to sit the cultivation center of the ancient kingdom of Shenle, the Royal Holy Temple. The Royal Holy Temple was an impressively expanded cultivation center. Its training grounds and temples covered the entirety of Mount Taisang, worshipping innumerous gods and immortals alike, scintillating and glorious. The main god worshipped was the heavenly emperor, and his golden temple was situated on the highest peak. The Crown Prince Temple that once stood at the highest peak was also a place of magnificent splendor. 800 years ago, Mount Taisung was renowned for its forests and flaming red maples, and within those maple groves were endless crowds of devotees. However, when the kingdom of Shenle fell, the crowds of devotees became crowds of angry rioters. They scaled the mountain to set ablaze the Crown Prince Temple, but they ended up setting fire to the entirety of Mount Taisung, burning it down to nothing but blackened earth and ash. The burnt earth, like ground nourished by the dead, seemed to become even more fertile. Afterwards, new seeds were planted upon the burnt earth, and new trees emerged. A few hundred years later, the mountain was fresh and covered once more, but the red leaves were no longer. The scenery was very different from 800 years ago. When hiking the mountain in the past, there used to be a wide paved path bordered by greenery. On the path, one could see a devotee or a young trainee hauling firewood or water. Now, this path was long gone. Rocks and debris, withered branches and sticks, had covered its tracks and buried it deep underground. As Julien climbed, he used only the strength of his legs, and when he ran into thorns or bushes, he took function and cut them down. Popcorn Liam.
When he reached halfway up the mountain, Julien was fatigued and leaned against a dead tree, ready to rest. Suddenly, the black shadow of an object came crashing down from the branches, making odd crackling sounds as it rushed towards him. Julien dodged. At first, he thought it was a broken branch or a nest, but when he looked over, it was a plank so rotten that its original shape was indiscernible, with two rusted steel chains connected to either side. If it were anyone else, they might not be able to tell what it was, but Julien knew immediately that it was a swing. In the past, Mount Taisung?
Mm-hmm.
Mount Taisung had swings installed everywhere, both for fun and for training. Back when Julien had only just started to retain memories, he once accompanied his parents to visit the Royal Holy Temple to pray for blessings. He saw a group of young trainees sparring, flipping and flopping all over the swings. It was an exciting performance. The king and the queen enjoyed it, and Julien clapped and shouted his appreciation. The king and queen were so pleased that they richly rewarded the young trainees, and ever since then the impression was left deep in Julien's heart that cultivation was something awesome and fun. Though when he formally entered the sect for cultivation in his later years, the reason was no longer because it seemed fun. After some rest, Julien continued hiking. The higher he climbed, the thicker the bushes became, and every so often a critter would dart by, leaving behind a shadow of a bushy tail. There were a few squirrels huddling in the trees, munching on pine cones, peeking at this uninvited guest. Thorns blocked his path, tearing at his clothes and limbs, but Julien didn't mind at all. 6 hours later, at last, he reached the peak of the Crown Prince Summit. Of course, the Crown Prince Summit wasn't originally called the Crown Prince Summit, but the name was changed after the Crown Prince Temple was constructed. Amidst the bushes and weeds, there were still remnants of pebble-paved grounds here and there. These were hidden traces of the large burned foundation of the temple's great hall. Going across it, through the rubble and ruins, past tinted glass tiles, he reached a chipped old well. Looking from above into its bottom, it was easy to tell that the old well had long dried up. The distance to the bottom was only a little over a meter, and all that was visible was sludge. Without hesitation, Julien pulled his legs over the side and jumped in. He didn't tumble into sludge, but instead traversed through that illusion and descended for over a dozen meters before his feet touched solid ground. The surroundings were so dark that if he were to raise his hand, his fingers wouldn't be visible. He looked up. There was no sunlight either, as if a heavy piece of fabric had blocked it out. Julien felt around the bottom of the well, feeling several bricks, and pressed them in a certain order. With a rumbling noise, a small short door opened on the side. Julien dropped down on all fours and slowly crawled through the path past the small door. The moment he entered, he could hear another rumbling noise behind, sealing off the opening. After half an instant's time, he had finally crawled to the end of the tunnel. Julien straightened up, snapped his fingers, and held up a small flickering flame. After that small ball of flame was ignited, as if in response, not far in the distance, another faint light started to glow like a pearl, as it awoke from its deep slumber and blinked open its bright eyes. Soon after, more and more pearls glowed, connecting throughout and illuminating the surroundings. It became clearer and clearer that it was the spacious great hall of the underground palace. Above the great hall, there were embedded thousands of sparkling stars. It was hard to imagine that the imperial mausoleum of the ancient kingdom of Shanle was hidden beneath the scorched earth of Mount Taisong. Those brilliant stars were night pearls, and diamonds embedded in the ceiling. The night pearls glowed when they came in contact with light, and the diamonds reflected their radiance. When they crossed paths, the result was a bedazzling brilliance, like a dream. It was like a minuscule Milky Way hidden below ground. Each night pearl and diamond was priceless. Each night pearl. Each jewel was worth an entire lifetime of riches. However, Shelian didn't spare them a glance, just walked directly through the great hall, entering the crypt at the very back. Popcorn August.
In comparison to the Great Hall, this tomb was exceedingly simple, as the chamber wasn't fully completed. There was no resplendent decor, only two coffins. Between the coffins stood a person dressed in extravagant clothing. There was a golden mask on its face, and a sword extended, the blade sharp and dazzling, pointed at him. However, this person remained frozen in that stance and didn't make any movement. Shilian idly approached without a single care. This was because Shilian knew that behind the golden mask there was no face, and under the exquisite dress there was no person. The only thing standing there was an empty sack of dried hay, held together by bundles of sticks. For so long only this set of elegant dress robes and this mask had stood by the sides of those two solitary coffins in his stead. On top of each coffin was a small golden plate, but the things in those plates contrasted their elegance. Fruits of some sort, dried and shriveled to the core, and some unknown hard blocks that were rotten and blackened. After Shilian entered the chamber, he cleared out those things and tossed them into a corner of the crypt. He felt around in his sleeves and clothing folds. Originally, he'd had a half-eaten bun on him, but that bun was given to Hua Chung, so now he had nothing. Thus he said, "Father, Mother, I apologize. I've forgotten to bring something for this visit." Naturally, no one answered him. Shilian slowly sat down and leaned against one of the coffins. After zoning out for some time, he finally spoke again. "Mother, I saw Qirong. Qirong didn't die. He turned into a ghost. I really don't know how he's lived these past hundreds of years." Shilian shook his head. "He killed a lot of people, and now there are people trying to kill him. The upper court probably wouldn't forgive him either." Shilian sighed. "I really don't know what to do with him." He was going to say more, when suddenly, from some place extremely close, there came the sound of soft weeping. Shilian froze, and his expression changed drastically. He listened closely. It wasn't a hallucination. It really was the sound of crying. The voice was very low, very small, and would have been easily missed if he didn't hold his breath and pay close attention. The sound was also soft, and if it wasn't a child, it had to be a woman. The crying was very close. It was as if they were only separated by a thin wall, and the sound clinging close to him. Shilian whipped his head around, and at last confirmed. The sound came from the coffin he was leaning on. Amidst his shock, the first words that came blurting out were unconsciously joyous. "Mother, is that you?" However, Shilian snapped out of it immediately, knowing that what he had desperately hoped for would never come true. His mother had passed 800 years ago, relieved of her suffering, and she had never devolved into a grudging ghost. The emotion behind those cries was also not of sorrow, but of fright. In this time and place, who in the world would be hiding in his mother's coffin and weeping? Shilian couldn't wait for another second, and he threw open the cover of the coffin with his left hand, his right hand on function, ready to strike. But the moment he saw what was inside, the striking sword stopped abruptly in its path. Lying inside the coffin, alone, was the form of a person covered in elegant black attire, with their head wrapped in a face cover. The only person who this should have been was his mother, but the one lying in the casket was most definitely not her. The form was small and short, the body type completely different, and most significantly, this person was trembling. It was a real, live person. Shilian ripped off the face cover. Sure enough, beneath the fabric was the face of a young child. His heart froze at that moment. He grabbed the child and lifted him, his voice shocked and panicked. "Where is my mother? Where is my mother? What did you do to my mother's body?" Although that elegant black dress didn't look anything out of the ordinary, it was in fact woven from the silk of an extremely rare worm. The silk was a tribute from a small foreign nation, and weaving it into clothing took intricate craftsmanship. Interwoven with fragrant herbal satchels and sealed into the coffin, the cadaver would remain preserved for thousands of years, allowing the dead to look like she was still among the living. However, at that moment, the one wearing the black silk dress was this child. So where did the body of his mother go? What condition would it be in now? Julien didn't dare to think deeply on it, and could only demand answers from this unknown child in his hold. He questioned once more sternly, "Where is my mother? Who are you? Why are you here? Why did you do this to my mother's body?" But how could a child terrified to tears answer any of his questions? He was too scared to even speak. Julien dragged him out of the coffin, and suddenly that some ashen white powder had been shaken out of the black dress with that movement. Face white as a sheet, he looked into the coffin and found that the bottom of the casket was also covered with a thin layer of powder. The world spun, and Julien felt his heart stop. His grip loosened, letting the child go, and he fell to his knees before the coffin, his mind blank. He didn't dare to touch that powder with his hands, but he couldn't just let it sit and sift either, like incense ashes flying in the wind. Although in denial, he knew deep within what it was. Once the silk funeral garb was forcibly removed, what else could a sealed cadaver of 800 years become? Instantly, Julien's mind fell into chaos. Unable to think, he held his head with his hands, and there was ringing in his ears. Just then, his back tensed as his instincts sensed danger behind him. He whipped his head around, and with a hand fast as lightning, he seized the blade of a sword barehanded. Someone had tried to stab him from behind. It was that stack of bundled hay. Popcorn Leon.
It turned out that someone had long since snuck in. They had dressed themselves in that exquisite attire, put on the mask, and disguised themselves as a lifeless haystack to wait for him silently. A loud clang rang in the air, and Julien broke the blade in two with his bare hands, face unchanging even with the blood pooling in his palms. As fast as lightning, he raised his leg and kicked that person in the abdomen, stomping them firmly into the ground. With their chests solidly pinned, that person grabbed at his boot and struggled, but they were unable to move an inch, as if they were nailed to the ground. Julien bent over and slapped away the golden mask with one hand, revealing the face of a young man. Julien shouted, "Who are you? A grave robber? How did you get in?" Just then, the child to the side cried, "Daddy!" This cry finally made Julien remember. This man and child looked familiar. Weren't they that pair he saved from being cooked and eaten by Chiron back at Green Ghost Lair? Julien understood the situation instantaneously. He swung a punch like striking thunder at the man's jaw, roaring, "Chiron, get the hell out! I'm going to kill you." The man laughed as he spat blood. "Cousin Crown Prince, what a joyous occasion. We meet again. Ha ha." Although the face was different, who else but Chiron could this insane psychotic laughter belong to? When he lost his physical form... Stop that! When he lost his physical form, he possessed this young father. No need for further explanation, but after this, his material body was thrown into that cauldron by
Lon Chin Cho.
Long Chin Cho and melted away. He must have used the chaos of everyone running for their lives to possess the young man to avoid being pursued, and then came to the Imperial Mausoleum of Shenle. Otherwise, how could a commoner know of the secret tomb of Shenle royalty? And how could they have found it in such a short time? That child he dragged along may have been intended as rations for travel, or maybe the intent was to hide him in the coffin to divert Julien's attention for his ambush. Julien punched him again, and Chiron held his face, looking aggrieved. "Cousin, why are you so mad? It's not like you died from a stab wound. Hee 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 hee." Thud, thud, thud. Julien punched him twice more, his eyes red around the rims. "How did my mother always treat you, and yet you treat her like this? How could you? To her body." Chiron humped. Yimu, is it Yimu?
Yeah, Yimu.
Yimu is long dead. The person is no more, so what difference does it make if she's a corpse or ashes? The corpse only changed form. Isn't it still there? Here you are, leaking tears and snot. Weren't you much tougher when you killed Anli?
Anla.
Anla? Anla?
Mm-hmm.
Can't believe my good cousin actually has two faces. Hee hee.
Hee hee.
He then changed his face and spat. "How could I treat her like this? You're the one to blame. Don't you even know how to reflect on yourself? This is all your fault. You, god of misfortune, have the gall to come and cry at the imperial mausoleum of Shunla. Shalian, it's happening to me.
Pass me the ball, pass me the ball.
It's you, it's you, it's you.
Tag me in, coach. Shilian stomped down harder, and Chirong screamed, spewing blood from his mouth. But he looked even more excited and used both his hands to cling on firmly to the now blood-soaked white boot while he howled, that's right, just like this. This is more like you. Fight, fight, kill, hit ruthlessly, kill ruthlessly. Don't give me that timid, saintly teacher look, as if you're so burdened with unspeakable sin. It's disgusting. Ugh! The child crawled over, crying loudly, Dad, are you alright? He couldn't understand what was happening, only that his father was being trampled. From his point of view, Shilian was like an evil devil. But he was so scared of losing his father that he wouldn't back down and tried desperately to pull the boot off his father's chest. The young man wouldn't stop spewing blood, scaring the child half to death, and he used his hands to cover his father's mouth as if he could stop the bleeding. Seeing this, Shilian slowly calmed down. He understood that the owner of this body was innocent and eased his foot slightly. He pointed the tip of Function down, nudging it against Chirong's cheek, and said forebodingly, Chirong, you get the hell out yourself. Don't believe I won't pull out your soul with your tongue. Theoretically, in pulling out the tongue from its root, one could certainly pull out any ghost possessing a body along with it. Chirong refused the very idea. I won't get the hell out. What are you gonna do? Come on, pull. Come. Gonna kill me? I might just die, so don't miss this chance. Otherwise, you can forget about ever finding my ashes in this lifetime. He even stuck out his tongue intentionally, as if he couldn't wait for Shilian to make good on his threat, and use that bloody method to pull out his soul out of this fleshy body. He taunted with childish noises of ooh la 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 la. The one I'm possessing is a nobody anyway, so why don't you? No one would know. No one would care. Your Highness's holy radiance won't suffer a bit of damage. Look, I crumbled your mom to ashes. Aren't you gonna kill me? That child couldn't move Shilian's boots, so he hugged his leg and cried louder, Don't kill my dad! Don't kill my daddy! Shilian's breathing was becoming more labored, his head dizzy, his body shaking, his hands itching to crush Chirong's skull, but he couldn't do it. Chirong spread his hands in a shrugging motion. Cousin Crown Prince, what a failure, what an absolute failure. Shilian picked him up off the ground, raised his fists, and rained punch after punch down on Chirong's face, yelling with each hit, Shut up, shut up, shut up! Yet the more enraged he was, the happier Chirong became. It didn't matter if the price was a violent beating. Chirong was filled with rapture at his opportunity to drag both of them down to the same hell. His eyes shone brightly. See, there's your true face. Cousin Crown Prince, is there anyone in this world who knows you better than me? No. You might look like a pathetic lost stray who anyone can trample, but I know you too well. You're still proud on the inside. You could never stand anyone calling you a failure. You must hate me for calling you a failure, but I have stabbed your heart enough to bleed. Hurry, come. Or are you going to tell me loudly that this body is innocent so you won't kill me in order to spare him? Come, show me what you'll do. With so much provocation pervading that cocky, insane laughter, Shilian couldn't endure it anymore. With a metallic shing, Function was unsheathed, and with a flashing swing, the ominous black blade struck down. Popcorn Liam.
Can't do anymore, bro.
No, you hate me.
It's a good time. Look, it's Arc 2.
Actually, it's not a good time.
It is because you're crazy.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yum, 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 yum.
Meow 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 meow.
Well, I'm gonna ask the Canadians to play video games.
Hold on.
What are you doing? Yeah. They're gay. Don't spoil yourself.
I'm literally not. It's all that we've seen. Oh my god.
Yeah, dude. Look at him covering his fucking face while he strokes it.
He's got a little bit of blush. Can you see it?
Yes, of course he does.
Oh, there's little stars around his fucking face.
He's so excited. He's autistic for swords. That's his autism special interest.
Wow, they're all autistic in these books.
Yeah, they're all a little autism.